It's hard for us to imagine how difficult it was to travel in colonial America. Today, we can get in a car and travel 600, 700, 800 miles in half a day. We can go wherever we want. There's fuel along the way. There's food, there's lodging. It's incredible. In the 18th century, a trip like that might take 3 weeks. And every single day, you had to negotiate. Figure out where you were gonna stay, how you were gonna get fed, how you were gonna feed your horses. There are some amazing journals that we have available to us today. Journals like Madam Knight's journal, where she talks about traveling all by herself, by horseback, in the early 18th century. We're talking like 1720, and she has to do some of the most difficult traveling possible, crossing rivers and trying to find lodging and food along the way. We have other journals like generals that are talking about traveling, or people traveling for their health. And in every one of these situations, we have fascinating stories about exactly what they're eating and all the difficulties they have in trying to find a place to stay. We have Michael Dragoo in the kitchen with us today, and he has a brand new cookbook on colonial road foods. Tell us about it.
As I was producing my first cookbook, Colonial Comfort Foods, and I was following my family's trek from France to England to the colonies, right in the middle of writing that book, I was thinking about, well, what did they eat on the way? They're not packing ho-hos and toasties in the wagon. There's got to be places to stop, and I didn't know much about those places. And in some of the books that I've gotten from Townsends, Cresswell in particular, he doesn't necessarily say what he's consuming, but he's using different names for the stops, and I didn't know what those were. So I started researching, and another book showed up. So I've picked a little over 65 recipes that I've modernized in such a manner that you can reproduce in your own kitchens. And I really enjoy every single one of these. They're all surprising to me about how good they taste. So I hope you enjoy them.
This cookbook is now available on our website. You can go check it out. There'll be a link down in the description.
So we're going to do 3 recipes today. The first one is a beef steak pie.
This is from the experienced English housekeeper. It's Elizabeth Raffold, and it's 1769. Here's the recipe. Beat 5 or 6 rump steaks very well with a paste pan and season them well with pepper and salt. Lay a good puff paste around the dish and put a little water in the bottom. Then lay the steaks in with a lump of butter upon every steak. Put on the lid. Cut a little paste in what form you please and lay it on.
The first step is to cut the sirloins into bite-sized pieces and set them aside. We're going to take our puff pastry and we're going to just line the edge of the pie plate, not the bottom, because we're going to take some beef broth and pour it in the bottom, put our steak bites in, we're just going to salt and pepper them, and then we're going to put butter on top of that, put a top crust on, and pop it in the oven. The temperature is 350, and I would suggest you set it for about 50 minutes, and it may go on to 60. I've done these 4 times now, and it's been between 50 and 60 minutes.
What do you think about what's happening with the pie crust? We would think, hey, let's put the pie crust through the entire plate, but on these, they're not doing that.
No, they are so sloppy that they would just be a doughy mess on the bottom. The sides, actually, with the puff paste in the oven, they do puff out and they stay nice and crispy, and the top is beautiful.
But all this is really doing is sealing in the moisture and making this cook and stew up.
That crust is steaming the meat, so it cooks more evenly.
This is the perfect kind of dish that you would find in a tavern or a home that's serving as a tavern along the road, because it's the kind of dish that you can serve or that you can cook and then wait and serve as people come in.
These establishments are run by families, so a child can be making this. It's so simple.
Let's give this a try. Oh, yeah.
It's done all the way through, and it tastes great.
A wonderful, savory pie anybody can cook.
This next recipe is mushroom-based. It's a cream sauce. These days I would consider it more a soup. I've used it many times, and it's excellent.
To make a mushroom sauce for white fowls of all sorts. It's interesting you turned it into a soup, but that's okay. This is in The Art of Cookery, made plain and easy by Mrs. Glass, Hannah Glass, 1747. Take a quart of fresh mushrooms, well cleaned and washed, cut them in 2, put them in a stew pan with a little butter, a blade of mace, a little salt, stew it gently for an hour, then add a pint of cream, the yolks of 2 eggs beat very well. Keep stirring till it boils up, then squeeze half a lemon, put it over your fowls or turkeys, or in a basin, or in a dish, with a piece of French bread first buttered, then toasted brown. And just dip it in boiling water, and put it in the dish, the mushrooms over. And the mushrooms over that, I guess, is what she means.
Yeah, she's wanting that crispy sippet to be more of a sop, I think, under the soup, but it's it was gross when I did it, and we're not doing it today.
So it's kind of a gravy, and you could use it like a soup. You could use it a bunch of different ways.
It's a cream-based soup. I like it very much.
I really like the way this cookbook is put together. You've got a nice big picture of the dish on one side in color, and then the original recipe as well as how you put it together. So you've got the modern interpretation as well as the period interpretation along with these helpful notes. This is really a great way to consume these period recipes.
As with the last cookbook, I have a you don't say section many times, which explains further, goes into a little more detail about something. In this case, it's talking about the English varieties of mushrooms versus the colonial. And they're used to a certain thing, just like different hapless mammals hoofing around or different plants coming around. They've got to relearn certain things. And so they're watching their livestock graze, and they're watching native animals graze to know which mushrooms are safe and which are out to kill you. Our first step is just to cut these mushrooms down into bite-sized pieces. We're going to add a little bit of water. We're going to start simmering them. We're going to add some butter, some salt, and a little mace. We're going to simmer those for about a half an hour. We're going to mix a couple of egg yolks with some heavy whipping cream, and we're going to temper those eggs so that when we introduce that into the simmering broth, they don't scramble. It'll just thicken that broth a bit. This is a one-pot wonder. Everything that's in that thing stays. You're not separating anything afterwards.
And this, when we're done with it, could be used in a bunch of different ways. We can use it like our soup. We can also pour it over the dish or pour it over fowl like they talk about in this recipe. And probably several other ways we could use it, maybe even on beef.
Absolutely. This person recommends fowl, but turkeys, chickens, I suppose. If you found enough thrushes, you could eat them on that. But this is very good by itself too.
This is a delicious smelling sauce. If you want to call it a sauce, we're not going to have it as a sauce. We're going to have it as your, in theory, soup here.
Yep.
It's very thick for a soup, though. You really let it kind of settle in there.
More of a stew, a mushroom stew.
Mushroom stew, okay.
In this time period, stew is a verb, not a noun, but...
Okay, but you did stew them, so it is.
Here we go. Wow.
Ooh,
this is good.
Super excellent.
This is really good.
I mean, normally you would put this on top of something. We could put it on top of that beef pie if we wanted to.
Yeah.
But all by itself, it is tremendous.
It's still over there.
It is. Throughout this 100-year time period where we have these journals from the 18th century, it's very fascinating that almost every one of their experiences are very similar. The kinds of places they're staying. Usually, it's just a regular home or a tavern, which we would recognize as basically someone's home that they've opened up for regular public travelers. But many times, you're staying in just somebody's house. There is not a particular place to stay. And so many times, we find pretty hospitable situations where the person who they've stopped at their home is just opening up their home and feeding this traveler, which we would probably find pretty strange today. There are some circumstances where these travelers find no place to stay, no one who will let them in, although this is fairly rare, even in the very deep backcountry. Charles Wood Mason talks about traveling in the backcountry of South Carolina. He meets with usually fairly hospitable situations, even when the people who are living there have almost absolutely nothing. I love the journal of Dr. Alexander Hamilton, who is traveling for his health. He describes staying at all these inns and taverns, and he's usually talking about the people he has to deal with at the same time. So every inn and tavern will have travelers as well as local people who are enjoying the location to converse, have social conversations, and everyone he runs into is very nosy about where he's come from and where he's going. So what's our next recipe, Michael?
Well, it's a biscuit drop. It's a sweet biscuit. There's just as much flour as sugar. And I picked this because it's a surprise. It's not at all what you think of today when you think of biscuit. Not light and fluffy like you would slather sausage gravy over. It's almost like a cookie.
The fascinating thing about a biscuit like this is that there's really no leavening in it. So we think of them as light and fluffy. This is a dense biscuit. Let me read the recipe. Let's see. This is out of the Cooks and Confectioners Dictionary by John Knott in 1723. This is early, but you'll find other similar ones in the time period. Beat a pound of sugar, the yolks of 4 eggs, the whites of 2 eggs, with a little sack, then put in a pound of flour, a few seeds, mix it all well together, butter the paper, lay your batter on in spoonfuls, and then it says ice them with fine sugar and set them in a gentle oven. So these are kind of baked at a low temperature.
Yes.
And they are kind of cookie-like.
Very cookie-like and dense, but tasty. For this recipe, we're going to mix our flour and sugar and seeds together, and then we're going to add our wet ingredients, a little at a time. We're going to add our egg and egg yolk first and just see where our consistency is. And if it's still thick, we're going to start adding the red wine until it's just the right consistency. We don't want it too stiff. We sure don't want it too fluid. The helpful hints for this recipe are explaining what sack is, and sack is just an inexpensive, cheap Portuguese wine that's fortified so that it survived the 3-month travel from Portugal to the colonies. And the other helpful hint is explaining that fine sugar is really nothing more than sugar that's been further reduced by a mortar and pestle to achieve a powder. You'll know you're at the right consistency when it's a little more moist than your average chocolate chip cookie dough. And you're gonna just put spoonfuls of this. You're not pouring it like a pancake batter, you're just putting dollops of this on the tray. You're gonna pop them in a 325-degree oven for about 15 minutes. I'd check them at the 12-minute mark because there is so much sugar in these, they have a tendency to burn on the bottom.
It can be a little confusing if we look at the original recipe because it seems like they're icing them and then putting them in the oven, but the reality is you cook them first, then you ice them, then you put them back in the oven. Sometimes these recipes really kind of skip steps, and that's why we really need these modern interpretations.
Right. I tried several different variations of heating them with the sugar first. The sugar just dissolves into the biscuit. You never see it. It didn't form a nice crispy, sugary crust. It just went into the thing. So it worked best for me to let them cool, and then I drizzled a simple mixture of powdered sugar, which is what he calls for, and milk, and then used that simple drizzle on top of the biscuits, and that was it.
And it's really helpful if we look at other recipes, like the recipe for a great cake will show us how the icing is done in that manner. Sometimes we use those other recipes to help us understand a recipe like this one.
Right, and sometimes to hold the body of the icing together, they'll mix egg whites in with that icing. In this case, they just asked for the sugar, so I may have cheated by adding the milk, but I didn't know how to make it be icing without it, so it could have been just an assumed thing on his part.
They're out of the oven and they look great.
They look great, yes.
And they smell great. They look like cookies. Okay, Michael, they call them biscuits, but...
They did, and we would consider them a cookie.
Yeah. So, these kind of flattened out a little bit, definitely, because of all that sugar in there.
Yeah, there's no baking soda or baking powder in this time period, so things aren't going to be all light and puffy.
Yeah.
They're pretty dense, but they're pretty darn good.
Let's try it.
Shall we?
Well, they are a little tougher.
They're half sugar. I mean, my levels are going to go nuts. This is so good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this had the... What seed did you put in this?
Well,
the dill seed.
I had a bunch of choices, and I was wanting something that would go along with the savory pie we did, and so I added the dill seed. This would be considered more of a special treat. Not everybody had unlimited amounts of sugar in their homes. The things that are showing up in these different recipe books from all these different time periods are doing something exceptional with the ordinary. And in this case, I think it's not only the sugar in this biscuit, but the icing on top. That's nutsy extra use of sugar the ordinary person might not have done.
I really want to thank Michael for bringing all these amazing recipes. They were all so good. And if you're interested, you definitely want to check out Colonial Road Foods, brand new cookbook. You'll find the link on our website. and down in the description section. It is available right now.
It's a continuation. I didn't know this cookbook was going to exist. I got interested in what people would have eaten on the road, and I was fascinated by the different types of businesses. You know, these communities treated ordinaries, public houses, taverns, inns, very much like they did a blacksmith. There'd be tax abatements. They might give the land straight out. They would help build the structure. And almost all of these were family run. I want to connect this further, just like I did the first cookbook, with your ancestry and give you a different way to celebrate and pay honor to those relatives who gave everything so that someone they'd never get a chance to meet, you would have a better life. And I think that I'm very proud of this book, and I hope you enjoyed it as well.